Hello everyone, this is Arcane31174, and today I will finally follow up on that reactor video. I am so sorry that it took me this long. I don't know what came over me, but the important thing is I'm going to finish it today. And as promised, I'll show you how to make an actively cooled reactor while explaining all the little details that I had no success in finding anywhere else online. And maybe I've given you enough time to figure it all out yourself, but in case you haven't, here it is. So, you may recognize this. You may recognize that. That's the reactor we built in the last video. Well, I built it, and you watched, but, well, you get the point. And this is a properly constructed, actively cooled reactor with a three-block electrum turbine. I'll explain what that means at a later time. Now, first, what is the difference between this reactor and this reactor, besides this one being passive and this one being active? The difference is the presence or absence of one block, this one. All these other blocks we used, but this, the reactor coolant port, we haven't. The recipe involves a bucket, 2 iron, 4 casings, and a piston. This block tells the multi-block structure that you are going to be making an actively cooled reactor. I'm going to put one here and show you what that does. You go over to the interface and notice that we now have pockets for water and steam. This energy buffer we can now ignore since it's irrelevant. Actively cooled reactors do not produce redstone flux. They instead turn water into steam, which goes into a turbine, which takes the steam, produces water, and power. So let's get to filling this up. We're going to take a fluid duct and stick it in there. Now over here I have thermal expansion aqueous accumulators. Put them in water, they send water. No power required. Now besides this port, which we can basically ignore, it's just a simple water intake. General rule of thumb that I have with my reactors is if you don't want them to end up like this monstrous mess here, have a number of coolant ports that is a multiple of 4, 8, 12, etc. And the number of ports on the turbine be the same number. Of course, not including the one water intake. This is because the fluid ducts can carry 3 times as much steam as water. So in order to balance it, you need 3 times as many water tubes. So we are going to have, I'm going to put 12 coolant ports. And don't worry about breaking the multi-block. As soon as you patch it up before the endurium starts spilling out, you're fine. Touch the endurium and you get teleported. Now you can take your wrench, or in this case power fist with built-in wrench, to switch these ports around. Water goes in the green ones, steam goes out the red ones. On a turbine it's the opposite. Steam goes in the red ones, water goes out the blue ones. Makes it less confusing. So now we have our actively cooled reactor. If we turn it on, this water will start getting turned into steam, but also be rapidly expended. So we're going to turn it off again because it will overheat if it's not being actively cooled. Hence the name. Now, to build a basic turbine, a turbine, you need the turbine construction blocks. This is the housing, which does need cyanite, which, if you may remember, is the byproduct of passively cooled reactors burning yellorium. So you will need to create a passively cooled reactor before you can make a turbine. So you need one of these. You will need nether quartz, iron, and graphite bars, which you make by, I guess, redstone furnacing coal or charcoal. Sounds easy enough. Turbine glass is turbine housing plus glass. Also easy. Turbine controller, diamond, plutonium, which again comes from cyanite. Except it doesn't show that. The power port, redstone, turbine housing. A rotor bearing, you'll only need one rotor bearing. And probably one, you'll need one of these, and one of these. A lot of either of these and the same number of these fluid ports as coolant ports you put under your reactor. Cyanite, ingot, iron, iron, and for the rotor blade, same ingredients but in a different orientation. Fluid port is pretty much same here as it was on the reactor, except using turbine housing instead of reactor casing. Now, the size of the turbine you build is going to depend on the amount of power you want. For example, do you need 20,000 redstone flux per tick to run this mining laser? That's a lot of power. If you generate that much power, you really don't need anything else. Do you have simpler needs? Well, maybe when you see all the options, you'll know better for yourself. But the basic dimensions of the turbine is a 5x5 face and a certain length. And it's probably advisable to build it at least with at least three blocks separating it from the reactor. Actually, you know what? I'd say 4. The reason being is so that you don't accidentally cross your tubes. So you're going to have that. Now you could have your fluid ports here. You could have some glass here. It doesn't matter. It multi-blocks either way, so I'm just going to put that there so we know what to do. And then I'm going to show you to a test world where I built a bunch of turbines that demonstrate how the different blocks work and the dimensions needed. Welcome to TB Test. This is a creative flat world where I have a bunch of turbines with a bunch of different coils, and yeah, we get to see them. This one uses iron. When I say a coil, I mean the turbine has a shaft in the middle, blades around the shaft, and some metallic block towards one side. There's also the rotor bearing is on the side opposite the coil. That's actually important. If it's on the same side, it doesn't work. But as for anything else, the multi-blocking is pretty creative. You can put the fluid ports or whatever anywhere as long as the edges are reactor casing and the rotor bearing is there. So you can put up to 4 blades on a shaft. I recommend putting 4 because that way it's most efficient use of space. And the turbines, if you look at the UI, they perform best at 900 or 1800 RPM. Obviously shoot for 1800 because that's better. So each type of block you can use for the coil has different properties. Different amounts of steam to maintain the max flow, different amounts of power, and therefore a different size that you would need to have it at 100% efficiency, since rotor blades can only fully capture energy from 25 millibuckets of steam per tick. So iron produces 478 redstone flux per tick using 150 millibuckets per tick, which means you would need, let's see, 150 divided by 25, which is 6. You need 6 blades, which means 2 shafts, so you might as well put 8 blades. And 2 shafts would bring your total length up to 5. 1 for the coil, 2 for the blades, and 2 for the edges. Now, if you want to go with gold, you require 258 millibuckets per tick to get to full efficiency. You generate 1680 redstone flux per tick at a length of 6. Then there's silver, 220, 1223. Electrum is the same length of 6. 296 millibuckets, 2400 redstone flux per tick. And then you get to the higher level reactors of length 7. These aren't all the blocks that you can use, but this is most of them. The most obvious ones and the ones that definitely are included in Tekkit. We have fluxed electrum, and we have shiny/platinum. The dust is platinum dust, but once you turn it into an ingot, it's shiny metal. So it's just a naming thing. Platinum is apparently better, and fluxed electrum, you do need electrum to use that. So if we get... just going to show you how it's made so that you can decide on your own which one you want. The block is shiny metal. So let's see. For fluxed electrum blocks, you need fluxed electrum ingots, obviously, which are made by induction smelting fluxed electrum blend with pyrotheum dust. You get fluxed electrum blend by fluid transposing destabilized redstone into electrum blend. Destabilized is, I think, magma crucible with redstone. Electrum blend is ground up electrum, which is something, I don't know. And, hold on, I want to go to recipe again. Pyrotheum dust is a bit more of an issue. Blaze powder, redstone, pulverized coal is fine, but sulfur is a bit more tedious. There's a bunch of recipes for 10%. Pulverizing blaze rods has a 50% chance of getting you a sulfur, but if you find nether sulfur, you can pulverize it to get 24, which will save you a lot of trouble. So you can use your sulfur to make pyrotheum dust to get your fluxed electrum, but then there's the shiny metal, which you get by either pulverizing nether platinum ore, which I've never found, and you have a 10% chance of getting it from pulverizing ferrous ore. Granted, I haven't doing much mining, but I haven't found much of that either. If you really want to find a lot of this, the mining laser that I mentioned before, use that. Really, I got 200 something blocks of it. It's crazy. So, go sulfur for this, shiny metal for this. Doesn't matter. And then there's endurium, which is, I believe, the best block for reactors in the game. Actually, I checked the documentation. It is. 448 millibuckets per tick of steam going in, which means you will need all 12 ports. But it generates 5,098 redstone flux per tick at a length of 8. However, endurium blocks require endurium ingots, obviously. You use endurium blend and pyrotheum dust, which requires resonant ender, which is crucibled ender pearls, pulverized tin, which is easy to find, easy to make, and pulverized shiny metal, which is, of course, the platinum, which is a pain in the ass to get. And then, of course, the pyrotheum dust, which requires the pain in the ass sulfur. So if you have sulfur but no shiny metal, go for this one. If you have shiny metal but no sulfur, go for this one. If you have both, this one. And don't worry about the ender pearls. There is a way to get a crap ton of them. You'll be looking for a way to get rid of them. Now, reactors do have a max length, which becomes significant once I tell you that if you want to produce more power, you can either create 2 turbines with 1 coil each, or 1 turbine with 2 coils that reacts the same way, consumes the same amount of steam, and produces the same amount of power as if you had 2 separate 1-coil reactors. So, for instance, if we had, let's go to the iron one, 1 coil of iron requires 2 shafts, 2 coils of iron would require 4 shafts, 3 would require 8, 4 would be 16, and so on, but up to a maximum size. This whole multi-block structure can only be 16 blocks long, which is this. Any longer than this, it won't multi-block. However, that does not apply to height. Vertically created turbines can be taller than 16. Not sure what the limit is, but since Endurium is the best block in the game, and a triple coil goes this high at full efficiency and works fine, I'm not sure what you need more power than 15,674 redstone flux per tick. Seriously. Now, one thing I have not mentioned, or may have stated incorrectly, is that the face must be 5x5. This is not the case. Here we have a 7x7x16. As I mentioned, 16 is the maximum horizontal length of the reactor, and you can make them much taller vertically. I have a quad coil Endurium reactor, and as you might be able to see, although the blades are spinning kind of fast, the turbine blades are 2 blocks long as opposed to 1. You are allowed to do that. It will still multi-block if you have 2 block long blades as opposed to 1 block. And 1 single rotor shaft with 8 blades on it, well, 4 double blades, acts the same as 2 shafts with 8 single blades on it. So I have a turbine that is producing 21,000 redstone flux per tick and is running this mining laser at full speed. If you want to connect it to this, make sure you have a place to put all this stuff beforehand. We now return to our regularly scheduled construction. Sorry for the inconvenience. So we already have the face done, the 5x5 block, and we're going to need to put the rotor bearing in here. Always has to be in the middle. So, once we have that, let's take the fluid ports. We have 12 on the reactor, so let's put 12 here. I don't think we'll need 12. I'm just putting it because I really don't want to have to do the math, and it really isn't that much of a resource strain to do, honestly. Now, the Endurium turbine was a length of 7, which means we are going to need to go 7 blocks over. So that's 1, 2. If you have fewer blades than you need, you can still get the maximum amount of power from it. It just won't be an efficient use of the steam that you put into it. And, well, the reason why you're building this thing is you want efficient power, right? So, yeah, might as well. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we want to take our Endurium block and create a coil. Then there's the turbine rotor blades and shafts. The shaft goes all the way across the length of the reactor. Set timed on. And the blades just go along here. Although I probably should finish the wall and floor before I... Yeah, let's... Even if you can't see a gap in the turbine, that doesn't mean it isn't there, so you do have to be careful. It's not going to blow up or anything, it just won't multi-block. And then we can put glass here so that you can see inside it and it looks pretty and everything. Also, don't have anything hanging off the edges. If you do, it won't work. It's great. Except, we still need our power tap and our computer, or controller. Controller, power tap can go anywhere, except on the very edges, because nothing can go on the edges. And then the fluid ports. We have 3 inputs and let's say 9 outputs, because the water pipe should always be 3 times the number of steam pipes. And then we just interconnect them with fluid ducts. Now, according to the laws of physics, you truthfully would not gain anything from having 3 of these instead of 1. Based on Minecraft logic says it's only the interfaces which dictate how much these things carry. So, yeah, physics kind of takes a hike in this one. As you can see, this is filling up with steam. And we're getting steam here in the turbine. Now these buttons, don't worry about these. You just want to make sure that this one, vent overflow only, is selected. If you want to read these and figure out why, be my guest. But really, don't dump the water. You want to reuse it. Now, before we turn anything on, we will need pneumatic servos. Unfortunately, you have to include these. Otherwise, things won't be pumped properly. You only put them on the outputs. Use your wrench to activate the arrows on these pipes to say that these are outputs, and then just right-click pneumatic servos into them to signify that they're pumping out of these ports. It'll tell you that a servo is installed whenever you right-click the... And then make sure they're facing out like this. They should be lighting up brighter red than that. I'm not sure why they aren't, but it should be fine. So, let's quit stalling and turn this thing on. So, you should also turn on the turbine so that it uses the steam and sends out the water. Now, it's not going to start up very quickly because we need to fill up the whole system with steam and water. There's water in here, there's steam in here. Turbine's not using it properly. Reactor is overheating, something is wrong. Shut down, shut down, shut down, shut down. This is not good. Not sure what the heck happened here, but I think installing the servos first, and there we go. Son of a gun. Alright. Let's do this again. Now we have plenty of water Reactor's keeping nice and cool. Nice steady steam flow into the turbine. Turbine's spinning up. Now we don't want it to spin up too fast. We just want to get it to a nice easy 1800 RPM. Go back, check the reactor, make sure it's okay. Lots of water to keep it cool. Steam is being taken out. That's good. Water is full here. Now remember, as you restrict the steam flow, there's less steam coming out of the reactor. And if the reactor steam tank is full, it can't steam up any more water. If it can't steam up more water, it doesn't cool down, it heats up, bad things may potentially happen in a future version of this mod. So once you make sure your turbine is not spinning up catastrophically, you check to make sure your reactor is not running too hot. And if it is, you can easily fix it by damping down the control rods. Oh, nope. Too slow. Now it's a bit of a balancing act. There's no way to say hold it at this speed. You have to adjust the flow. Seems like every time I play the game, the number to make the flow stay constant changes. So, I don't know. 436 looks good for right about here. Check the reactor. It's heating up. That's not too good. These pipes are never going to be completely full. Well, yeah, they are. But these tanks aren't. This pretty much means, if it's at these levels, pretty much means the system is saturated, and when it's like this, boop, you can cut that off. It's not going to dump anything at this point. It's all the fluids will be recycled. It no longer requires contact with an external source. Now, since we're heating up, we can turn down the control rods. See if that did it. Oh, still heating up. Let's go down to... You'll want to keep these... Oh, no, you want the control rods higher. I'm sorry, no, you don't put the control rods down. That makes the reactor hotter. You put them up to slow it down. Ah, there we go. Casing heat high casing heat is better, high core heat is not good. So what are we producing? 436 millibuckets per tick. That's just what's being consumed. I'm sure it would produce more than that if it had to, but it's not going anywhere. So it's cooling down a bit. And if we check our power port, well, it's right there. We have coming from here a little over 5,000 redstone flux per tick. Compare that to this reactor, which is only getting around 3,000. So yeah, that's the actively cooled reactor. Any questions? Anything you think I left out? Mad at me for waiting so long? Let me know in the comments below and I'll respond. I tend to respond to comments I get. So, questions, problems, let me know and I'll see if I can test it. In the meantime, in the future, I will show you a mechanism for collecting large numbers of ender pearls, which is, you're obviously going to need that if you want to use resonant ender to cool your reactor or endurium for your turbine. So I'll show you how to do that in a later video. And also, for vanilla Minecraft, I have an automated loading depot made using redstone. So you can look forward to that at some point. Okay, well, that should do it. Arcane out.